Hi, everybody, and welcome aboard to Local Matters. You know, depression and anxiety is one of the most common mental disorders in the United States and affects an estimated 17 million people each year. This, according to research. The disorder raises concern because of its impact on health outcomes and quality of life. And when we come back, we will meet a young man who shares his own battle with depression and anxiety. And he says it doesn't have to mean a lifetime of struggle. And he also says it certainly doesn't mean that it has to end in suicide. And when we come back, we're going to meet him. You know why? Because if it's local, it matters.
Dance. Let me see you move.
Baby, love never felt so good. Can't die if it ever could. Not like you. Oh.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us and welcome back to Local Matters. According to research and statistics from various organizations and scholars, depression and suicide are on the rise. Joining me today is a young man who says depression doesn't have to mean a lifetime of struggle, and he says it certainly doesn't have to end in suicide. He's here to share his battle with depression and how he's working as an advocate too for the disorder, especially within the Black community, with a specific focus on Black men. Welcome to Local Matters, Mr. Rodney Fumby. It is good to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Good. Rodney, you know, there are so many people out here who suffer from depression, they suffer from anxiety, and I can imagine that for most times they don't even realize that they're suffering from depression and anxiety. Tell me, when did you know, how did you know, what were you experiencing when you first realized that something was wrong?
Well, I was born and raised here in Anderson, Alabama. And,
Born and raised here in Anderson?
Yes.
Okay.
And around the time of my 10th birthday, the week of my 10th birthday, my mother was killed in a car accident. And at the time of her death—
Your mother?
Yes.
Was she here from Anderson too?
Yes, she was born and raised in Anderson, Alabama. Her family is between here and Lincoln, Talladega area, but she was born and raised here in Anderson.
I knew your mother. Did I know your mother?
Yes, well, you might have. Her name was Nilla Ragland.
Nella Ragley.
Yes.
Yes. Oh gosh, I remember that.
Yeah.
When she was killed. That seemed like it was just a few years ago.
Yeah.
That was in
It'd
the
actually
90s.
it was 2003.
2003.
Yeah, it'll be 15 years this September 3rd. It'll be 15 years this year.
Oh gosh.
Yes,
Yes, I remember that. I went to school with Nella for a short period of time.
And
Yeah.
She died on the 3rd. My birthday's on the 8th. We had the funeral on the 6th. So in that week of my 10th birthday, I lost my mother.
Yes.
And around that time, I was thrust into having to grow up because now I'm dealing with all these thoughts and all of these
Yes.
different situations that's happening around me. And I didn't really know how to deal. And so I would shut myself off from people. And shutting myself off felt like the thing to do.
Yes.
And I didn't want to come around. I didn't want to see people. I didn't want to talk to people. And my father put me into therapy around the time I was 10 years old. And
Because you began to shut down.
yes, and I think they were afraid maybe that would cause me to have depression or some kind of mental instability. And I went to therapy for maybe about a few months. And I remember one of the sessions I felt like the therapist was calling me crazy. And I think now my aunt says hindsight is 20/20. And I think in that moment, she was really trying to tell me as a 10-year-old that this is what you're dealing with. You're dealing with depression, dealing with anxiety, but I didn't really know how to accept it. And so I felt like she was calling me crazy. And I remember I walked out of the therapy session, told my father, I don't want to go back anymore. And I didn't.
And you didn't want to go back because you felt like she was saying you were crazy.
Mm-hmm.
These feelings, you didn't know how to really deal with them.
Yes.
And your father, so you shared this with your father that you felt afraid, and you said, I don't want to go back anymore. What did your father, what was his take on it?
He didn't make me. He didn't make me go back. He wanted to make sure that it was something that I wanted to do as a kid, and I was like, I didn't want to go back. But I'm thankful for that because
Really?
he didn't force me to
What?
deal with something I didn't want to. He didn't force me to go somewhere I didn't want to go, and I'm thankful for that choice because a lot of times we force things on our kids that we don't really know, and I don't think he really understood the weight of depression because we don't talk about and especially in the black community, we don't talk about depression and anxiety and things like that. So I don't think he understood in that moment that could have come out of that, but I'm thankful that he didn't force me to go back in hindsight, because the way my life has kind of panned out now, coming back to it, figuring out that this is exactly what I was going through kind of led me to deal as an adult with the situation that I was facing, which was my depression and anxiety.
Okay, so your father didn't make you go. I mean, you said something too, as I was sitting here listening to you, you said something very key, and you said that within the black community, really didn't want to talk about it.
No.
So you felt like your father really didn't want to go there anyway, that there could be something wrong with his son. He didn't really want to go there anyway. And you said that within the black community, that this is not what they want to talk about. And I'm right there with you, because there are several other coping strategies within the black community, church, religion being one. How did that factor into your life?
See, I was born and raised in the church, and I'm thankful for that upbringing.
Right.
Because that's first and foremost in my life, my connection with the Lord.
Right.
But at the same time, within the church, especially within the black church, we don't talk about that enough. We simply just tell them, go pray about it. And we leave them to that.
Right.
We tell them to go pray for help when we are actually supposed to be that help. There's nothing wrong with going to church, having Jesus, and having a therapist. Because if
Right.
we talk about therapy and getting professional help as much as we talk about prayer, a lot of the things that we deal with, we wouldn't be dealing with.
Yes.
Because I do believe, as far as myself, that God placed these people on earth, these therapists, these psychologists, to help us out where we don't know, because we don't know everything. These people that went to school for this, that studied this, that understand the mind and the way that we work on the inside.
Right.
And the pastors know from a spiritual standpoint. And we're not just spiritual people, we're both spiritual and we're physical. And so we tend to put a lot of emphasis on the spiritual side and just do not talk about the physical side. And I think we need to speak up more.
So you think that we should marry the
Yes.
two, the
Yes.
spiritual side, along with going in and getting medicinal help.
Yes.
From there. When we come back, we've got to go to break now. I want to talk more, because Rodney is working as an advocate now, more so with a specific focus for young black men who may be dealing with depression and anxiety. He's working as an advocate. He has done some amazing creative work, and when we come back, I can't wait to share it with you. We'll be right back with more Local Matters. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Local Matters, where living local never felt so good. I'm Dottie Rimpsey, and I'm joined with Mr. Rodney Fumby. Rodney is an Anastonian, and he shares with me and shared with us, if you're just joining us here on set, he talked about his battle with depression and anxiety. He shared with us that he lost his mother, Miss Nella Ragland. Most of us know her. He lost her at a very young age, and after losing his mother, he began to have feelings that he was not comfortable with. But he also shared with us that when he went to seek help, it was not really embraced. And so he's now been working more so as an advocate, really helping to raise greater awareness about anxiety and depression, especially within the black community, and especially with a specific focus for young black men. Rodney, I understand that you graduated from Alabama State.
I sure did.
Yes,
Yes, I did.
and I see you have on your A Phi Alpha.
Alpha Phi Alpha, yes, ma'am.
Yes. You majored in what? Mass communication, was it?
Theater arts. It was
Theater arts.
Yes, ma'am.
And so, from what I can understand, you've been able to use that as a tool, as a vehicle to help you raise greater awareness. Tell us, how are you doing that?
Well, I want to first and foremost say that anybody can be an advocate when it comes to mental health. It simply begins with having the conversation and being willing to listen to somebody.
Right.
I've had the idea to do the film a long time ago, actually. We just did it earlier this year, but it was about a year and a half ago when I had the idea to do it, and some kind of things fell through. But I was kind of torn if I should do it or not, because I didn't know exactly how I wanted to present it. I didn't know how I wanted to talk about it, because it's a very taboo situation, a very taboo subject that we don't talk about. And I knew I had to approach it with a certain kind of care.
Yeah, very, very delicately.
Very delicately, because a lot of people are dealing with it.
Yes.
But I simply just had to sit down with myself, and I told myself to just tell the truth. Because one thing that we don't talk about is how big of a bully depression can be, of how rude it is, of how angry it can make you, because it does not care about anything that you have going on, doesn't care about your plans, doesn't care about what you want to do for that day. And I wanted to show that side of depression, to bring awareness, to show you exactly what depression is, because we think that it's mood swings, or somebody doesn't feel like waking up this morning, or they want to leave the bed. We don't talk about the real side of depression and what we hear, those of us that are dealing with it, what we hear that others cannot.
So you wanted to tackle it from a more of an internal,
Yes.
bringing it from the inside out to allow people to see what it feels like when you are battling this. I want to go ahead and take a look at some of your work here. Awesome work.
What are you doing in here? I didn't tell you that you were hungry. I haven't eaten since yesterday. And? What's that supposed to mean? I tell you when to eat, just like I tell you when to do everything else. I run you. And you can't make a single choice without me. Come on, man, please. I'm hungry. I just wanted something small like a sandwich or a bag of chips. See, that's one of your problems. You don't listen well. Now, I told you, I'm in charge here.
Wow. You were playing a dual role.
Yes.
Talk to us. What was going on in that scene?
Well, in that scene, the guy with the bandana, his name is Corey,
Okay.
and he was the one dealing with depression, and the other guy in all black, his name was Devlin, which was his depression personified. In that scene, Corey had just gotten up out of the bed to go get something to eat. But in that moment, as he opened up the refrigerator and closed it, he realized Devlin was on the other side.
His alter ego.
Yes.
Yes.
And he was telling him, like, you can't make a single move without me. Like, you can't eat unless I tell you to. You can't leave the house unless I tell you to. You can't even go anywhere and do anything unless I give you permission to do so. And in that moment, Corey's almost like begging, like, please, I haven't eaten all day. I just want something to eat. But Devlin is like, I don't care. And I want to show that part that depression does not care. Doesn't care if you haven't eaten for 2 days. It's almost, if I don't tell you to eat, then you're not going to eat, because I control you. And that's how we feel on the inside. It's like this other person is making all of these choices for us.
You feel this sense of hopelessness.
Yes.
Going through it, I can imagine, have there been times when people would look at you and say, you know, you are just so lazy, Rodney.
Oh.
That's what's wrong with you. Why don't you just get up? That is not real. I mean, have you had, especially within our community, have you had people say to you, depressed? Now, I'll give you something to be depressed for.
All of the time. And just being honest, a lot of it came from my own family. I've been called lazy and spoiled, and I think I know everything and things like that. And nobody ever once came to me and was like, hey, what is really going on? As a matter of fact, when I put the film out, the day that I put the film out, about an hour or so after I released it, my aunt called me and she was like, hey, Rodney, I saw your film. Are you okay? And I was like, yes, ma'am. And she was like, you're just playing the character, right? You weren't really. And I was like, well, auntie, I was, but the truth of the matter is that was real.
Right.
And from that moment, she and I had a conversation then, but that was years after the fact that she called me. And I was thankful for that, because I was like, at least now the conversations are being had. And my father as well started talking and things like that. But I was, yes, all the time. And that's why I wanted to put that out there for people to understand that it's not being lazy, it's the fact that we're zapped of this energy because this other person is just draining us. And to the point where you really don't feel like doing anything. You don't feel like getting out of the bed. You don't feel like putting on clothes. You don't feel like taking a shower, because you just don't have the mental capacity and energy to do anything.
Right. So you said, so I'm going to go back to your aunt calling you, who really still not really, was she not trying to accept it, because she said that's just the character, that's not how you really feel? Was that what she wanted you to say, is that's not really me, that's just a character?
I think on the inside, I think that's what everybody that has come to me from my family wanted. For me to say it was just a character, I was just exercising my degree and performing.
Right, just performing,
Just performing, instead of being the person dealing with it.
But this is what I've
But
really,
this is what, yes.
what I've really been dealing with. What
Yes.
I've really been dealing with. When we come back, we've got to go to break. I hear them in my ear. When we've come back, I want to share more scenes from Rodney's work. So creative, and I want to share more of his work. So we'll be right back with more Local Matters. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Local Matters, where living local never felt so good. If you're just joining us here on Local Matters, I'm here with Rodney Fumby, and he comes aboard Local Matters to really share his story. He's had some issues of battling depression and anxiety. He says it started when he was very young, when he lost his mother, Nella Ragland. Most of us in Anniston, who have lived in Anniston a long time, remember the day that she was killed, and he says he remembers how he began to feel right after her death. He shared with us earlier in the segment that he talked with his father about it, and he went to get help, but he realized that he began to feel bad in receiving help, and they never sort of really tackled that in that way professionally. He's here to share with us more of his story. He's done some amazing work because he does have a degree from Alabama State.
Yes.
And tell us, what was your degree again in?
Theater arts.
Theater arts.
Yes.
And so he's been using that talent to really raise greater awareness about depression and anxiety, especially within the Black community, and especially with a specific focus on young Black men. Because Rodney, as you mentioned, and you and I both know, our jails are filled way, the numbers are way too high. And many say that those who are in jail shouldn't be, that they shouldn't be in jail. Perhaps they should be somewhere else. Talk to us more about your work in making films. What does it do for you from the inside out?
Well, filming is something that I'm new to. I'm used to working on the stage, but I've always wanted a career in film as well. And I want to give a special shout out to my videographer and my business partner, TJ, who is the one that filmed Sanity and Sanity 2, which was the second film.
So let me go back. So this is actually a film that you made. It's a short film
Yes.
that you and your friend TJ made together.
Yes.
Sanity 1 and Sanity 2.
Yes.
Okay.
But as far as when you're saying about the jails, we have the conversation about mental health as it pertains to jails, but we don't have that conversation when it pertains to Black men.
Right.
And I want to advocate that it's okay for Black men to feel the emotions that you feel. A lot of times, especially from childhood, we don't teach our young boys it's okay to cry.
Yes.
It's okay to be angry.
Yes.
It's okay to be sad.
Yes.
And then when they get older, all of these feelings are foreign to them, so they try to block them out, and they end up indulging themselves in certain kind of criminal behavior, which subsequently lands them behind bars, which could be stopped if we nip it in the bud as a kid.
Yes.
Give them the freedom to feel as children, so they can feel as men, so that they understand that this sadness, this anger, this disappointment I'm feeling is not foreign. It's okay to feel that
It's
and to get to the
okay.
other side of it.
Right. I want to take a look, and I want to share. I want to look at another piece of Sanity 1. Let's take a look at that.
Sheila, I'm trying to tell you what. Hello? Sheila. She hung up on me. Everything okay? Everything is not okay. She just called me to cuss me out for missing the baby shower. Well, you have better things to do.
You are so creative, playing both roles. Who is Sheila?
Sheila is Corey's sister in that moment.
Okay.
And I wanted to put that in there because in that moment he was supposed to do something for Sheila, but Devlin, which was his depression, was out of the house.
So
he had-
that's the guy that's sitting there you've
With-
got looking.
yes.
Looks like he's just really
Yes.
way out in left field.
And he wouldn't let him in the house. And so he had to call and cancel, and his sister got upset and hung up the phone out there because people see that, they see the symptoms, but they don't always see the cause. Sometimes we speak to the symptoms, but we don't speak to the cause. And so she got mad and hung up thinking he was being flaky, crazy.
Just purposely wanting to just put her off, not show.
Not knowing that it was something else that was going on. So that's why I wanted to put that in there especially.
Speaking of symptoms, what are some of the symptoms that, because that is certainly one of them. And you talked about in your mind, I want to go, but the energy. Talk about some of the symptoms.
Well, for me personally, it was just the need to be alone. I felt like a burden to everybody. I felt like I was getting on everybody's nerves. Somebody wanted to be around me, and that comes with other things as well. But that is one in particular, because in that dealing, we don't feel like we can talk to anybody. So we shut ourselves off. And it's not being rude, it's not being standoffish. It's a matter of sometimes we want to just be out of the way because we feel like we're taking so much energy because our energy is being drained.
Right.
So for me, that was one major symptom.
And are there other symptoms? What about not showing up, as you mentioned, because Sheila got mad at you, and you're showing that in the film. Sheila got mad and hung up on you because you didn't show up. What about always when you do show up, you're not really there?
Right. I've been there. They call it being alone in a room full of people. I have a really big family, and there are times where I've been around all of my siblings and my mom and everybody, and I just felt like I was not there. I was there physically, but mentally, I was gone. One of my frat brothers would catch me sometimes when I was in college. I'd just stare off into space, and he'd be like, "Rodney," he'd snap like, "Rodney," and I'd be like, "Huh?" Because I didn't know that I'd left because I was there physically, but mentally,
Right.
I was somewhere else.
Well, you know what, Rodney? We are running out of time. I could sit here and talk to you about this all day long, but we just don't have the time.
Yes.
I want to thank you for coming aboard
Well, thank
Local
you.
Matters and really sharing your story, and again for raising greater awareness about anxiety, about depression. These are disorders that run rampant throughout our society. And so I want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, making films and raising greater awareness, because so many people, they need this. So thank you,
Thank you again.
once again for coming. And thank you for watching. You know why? Because if it's local, it matters.